When you're delivering your speech for the very first time, you might actually be thinking to yourself that the content of the speech is probably the most important thing above pretty much everything else. A small problem with that is people have a tendency to forget one of the most crucial elements when putting together a speech, and that's your audience. Now, you can put together the best speech you've ever put together in your life, and it may seem perfect and everything that you need. But if you have not analyzed your audience, you've done a disservice to the people who you're going to be speaking to. Because you have to remember the most important part of communication is delivering a message to somebody or to groups of people. And to do that, you first have to kind of understand a little bit about the people that you're actually delivering the message to. Because it's very easy to go off the wrong path when it comes to this. Is if you create a generic type of a speech that's supposed to cover pretty much every contingency plan, you may fail because you have no idea who the people you're supposed to be speaking to. So if I'm speaking to a group of doctors or nurses, or I'm speaking to people who are in the military that have a specific set of needs and wants in every speech that you deliver, if I don't know that going into it, there's a very good chance that whatever I deliver in the first place fails on pretty much every account. So let's talk about a couple of things that'll be really important to you when you start thinking about your audience. Now, granted, in an online course, it's kind of difficult to figure out who your audience is, but we will have multiple experiences together where you're going to actually analyze a lot of the group of people you're speaking to, because you will have communication with them as the semester goes on. As I mentioned in my very introductory video, is you have to make sure that you're, delivering to an audience, and the audience that we're going to be having in this class is the other people in the class. Now, keep in mind we don't have the opportunity to, come together in physical proximity to each other, but at the same time, we do have the ability to understand a little bit about other students in the class, such as they're all students, they're all available during the summer, they're in a specific period of time where all of us kind of match together. So you can start building some of your background on your analysis based on these little facts themselves. Now, when we're doing audience analysis, so say for another context going forward, like say you have to give a speech in front of an English class. Now, you're going to know something about the rest of the people in that class. And so the different ways of breaking that up is we first start dealing with demographics. Now, I don't know how much you know already about what demographics are. Give me 1 second. Demographics are basically the, characteristics of the people who will be in your audience that you start analyzing based off of what you already know or what you can research. Like, one of the first things you may get a little information on is such as their age, their gender, their religion, their occupations, maybe their family stature. These things you put together and they help you build your speech, because the more information you know about your audience, the more you know to speak to that specific audience. Another thing we generally know is, and you'll hear this term used quite often during your educational career, and that's the idea of Maslow's hierarchy of needs, which is in the very basic. We start off at a bottom of a tier of different information that we know about a specific audience, such as like what are their basic needs, like what things do everybody have in common that they need. They need air to breathe, they need food, they need shelter. All of these different things, these are needs that, especially when it comes to a persuasive speech, you can start thinking about going, how can I best benefit this group of people based off of what I already know about them. And so you start putting some of those things together, and then we start moving up the chain, or we often refer to it as a pyramid of how much information we know about them and what things are important to them, such as education might be an important thing because it may make their life better in the long run. So that comes a little higher onto the scale. The scale goes up, and if you read the book itself and check into the book itself, where it gives like the pyramid and explains what the hierarchy of needs are, you start to understand what things are most important to people. And as you fill in certain sections of the diagram, you get higher and higher until what we call our self actualization needs, which are the kind of thing where once you've achieved everything below it, you try to achieve the next higher thing on it. And the way the theory goes is the highest level, which is self actualization needs, where you've filled in everything you could do, and this helps you create the best environment for yourself going forward. So if I'm doing a persuasive and I'm starting to think, okay, well, at the very end of this persuasive, people will do these certain things and then reach this acclaim level that they've always wanted to reach. Well, it's really hard to make that the goal of the people in the audience if you still haven't filled, like the lower needs, such as, well, I mean, they're higher needs, but the on the scale, the lower needs, such as, can I breathe? Can I feed myself? Do I have housing over my head? And these things kind of fill up as you go through it, which is kind of best to just kind of like take a look at the chart itself and kind of see, oh, okay, these things make sense to me. And so that's kind of what we actually do, until it's all done. Now, I want to talk about a couple quick little things when it comes to the idea of what's called noise. Now, most people tend to look at noise as, some auditory system that makes it really hard for people to actually hear you. Well, those levels can actually be psychological as well. So, say you went in to take a test, and at the time when you're about to take the test, your stomach's grumbling because you haven't eaten anything in a little while. Or you have a test in another class which you haven't studied for or haven't studied as much for, and so you realize going into taking that test, this is noise in the sense of it's something that's keeping you from what you actually want to do, such as listening to somebody's particular speech, which also then adds another element to the problem. Is a lot of people, and I've seen this in many, many classes, where students will hear what you're saying, and no matter how much you keep saying it over and over again, but if they're not listening, which means they're not taking that auditory information and then churning it around in their head until they get to a point where they're like, oh, okay, this totally makes sense to me. If they haven't done that process in the educational aspect, they're going to find themselves not able to actually hear anything that you say. They will have heard you, but they will have not listened to what you said, and so therefore it kind of ends up not getting them anywhere in the long run.